A single ring. A voicemail of static and terror. A nurse vanishes after a strange call. A student's phone cuts out, and only buttons and hiss remain. A man's frantic message echo into nothingness. These are not isolated disappearances, but haunting phone calls that signaled a vanishing into thin air. Here are 5 mysterious phone calls before people disappeared forever. Story 1. She was a meticulous 28-year-old nurse, someone who loved order, routine, and caring for others. But on one cold December afternoon in Fayetteville, North Carolina, something broke that routine. On December 26, 1985, at exactly 4 p.m., Debbie Wolfe left her shift at the VA hospital after a strange phone call from a male volunteer, a call claiming she'd been missing work for days, even though she'd been present the day before. Those words would become the first ripple in a mystery that still chills investigators nearly 4 decades later. Deborah Ann Wolfe, born June 19, 1957, in Blytheville, Arkansas, a kind-hearted, dependable young woman. Her family described her as neat to a fault, gentle with her 2 dogs, happiest in her quiet cabin 7 miles outside Fayetteville. She had just spent Christmas with her family, cheerful, relaxed, making plans for the new year. No one imagined that the day after would become the beginning of a nightmare. When Debbie failed to show up for her shift on December 27th, her mother Jenny, her stepfather John Edwards, and family friend Kevin Gordon rushed to her cabin. What they found immediately told them something was wrong. Her car, parked in a different spot. Her dogs, completely unfed. Beer cans of a brand she never drank, scattered around the yard. Inside, her nurse uniform thrown across the kitchen floor, and her purse shoved under her bed, as if someone wanted it hidden. Then came another unsettling clue. A message on her answering machine, recorded earlier that day. A man insisting she had missed several days of work. A statement her family knew was completely false. Debbie was tidy, organized, predictable. This scene was chaos, and chaos didn't fit her. When they searched the area behind her home, they found a small pond, quiet, still, untouched. They begged deputies to search it, but the officers refused. They insisted they could see the bottom clearly and that nothing was there. So the family waited, worried, and wondered. On December 31st, 5 days after she vanished, the sheriff's office finally opened an investigation. Bloodhounds were brought in, but found no scent. Again, the pond went unchecked. It wasn't until New Year's Day, 1986, when Jenny arranged for 2 volunteer divers, Kevin Gordon and Gordon Childress, to search it themselves. Within minutes, Gordon discovered 2 sets of footprints and drag marks across the pond bed. He followed them deeper until he found Debbie's body. But it wasn't just her body he found. It was inside, or lying next to, what looked like a burn barrel. A barrel neighbors had seen near her home before Christmas. A barrel that was suddenly gone. A barrel the police would later claim did not exist. The autopsy revealed no drugs, no alcohol. Official cause of death, drowning. But Kevin, who had worked search and rescue for years, said her posture didn't match typical drowning victims. Her eyes weren't open, her limbs weren't extended, and her clothing looked wrong. Shoes 3 sizes too big, pants far too large, a bra that wasn't hers. Her mother became convinced the clothes weren't Debbie's at all. Debbie's family never accepted the accidental drowning explanation. They believed someone, possibly a hospital volunteer who had pursued her romantically, had taken her, held her, and staged the pond to look like a tragic misstep. What if the caller, claiming she'd been absent for days, was already watching her? What if her clothes were changed after she died? What if the barrel really was removed? And why deny it existed? And what if the drag marks in the pond weren't Debbie's at all, but the person who placed her there? Her family passed away without answers. Her case remains officially unsolved. Story 2. He left a nightclub with friends on a late summer night. He was supposed to go home, call his wife, and get ready for the work week. But hours later, a single phone call came through. Not a normal call, a voicemail filled with screams, growls, and then a final, chilling silence. And from that moment on, 32-year-old Henry McCabe was never seen alive again. Henry T. McCabe, born November 1st, 1982, in Liberia, a quiet, hard-working man who moved to the United States and built a peaceful life in Minnesota. He worked as an auditor for the Department of Revenue. He was married to Corinne. They had 2 young daughters, Erin and Anna. He was dependable, soft-spoken, a man who loved his family deeply. On the night of September 6th, 2015, Henry went out with friends to a club in Spring Lake Park. Witnesses said he seemed relaxed and in good spirits. But sometime after they left the club, things took an unexpected turn. A friend, William Pappas Kennedy, claimed he dropped Henry off at a gas station convenience store around 2 a.m. But later, GPS data suggested Henry wasn't dropped off there at all. Then, at 2:28 a.m., Henry's wife, living temporarily in California, received a voicemail from his phone, and it was unlike anything she had ever heard. The recording captured Henry screaming, then making guttural, agonized sounds, and then a voice, possibly his friend, saying, "Stop it." After that, the line fell silent. Investigators who heard the audio aid, it sounded like a struggle. Others said the noises didn't sound human. It became the single most disturbing piece of evidence in his case. By morning, Henry was reported missing. Search teams scoured the area. Volunteers walked wooded trails. Officers searched ponds, ditches, fields, but for weeks, nothing. No sightings, no clues, only the voicemail. Then, on November 2nd, 2015, nearly 2 months later, Henry's body was found in Rush Lake. No signs of trauma, no stab wounds, no gunshots. The medical examiner ruled the cause of death undetermined. And with that, the questions grew darker. If he was dropped at a gas station, why did his phone ping miles away? If he ended up in a lake, why were there no injuries? If he wandered there alone, what explained the screams? And why didn't his friends' stories align? Henry's family still lives with the pain of not knowing. His wife has spoken about the trauma of hearing that voicemail, a sound she can never forget. His daughters grew up remembering him through stories, photos, and memories shared by loved ones. What if the voicemail captured was Henry's final attempt to call for help, but the real danger was never identified? And what if the truth behind those last sounds was never meant to be found? Story 3. She left her shift at a busy mall on a cold November afternoon, walked to her car, and called her boyfriend, just a normal check-in before heading home. But seconds later, the call suddenly cut out. Hours after that, her phone dialed again, only static, and faint button presses on the other end, and by nightfall, Katrina Sjodin had vanished. Drew was born on September 26, 1981, in Pequot Lakes, Minnesota. She grew up in a close, supportive family that described her as kind, outgoing, and full of ambition. A talented graphic design student at the University of North Dakota, warm, goofy, a light in every room she entered. She had a boyfriend, Chris Lang, whom she adored, and who adored her just as deeply. On November 22, 2003, around 4 p.m., Drew finished her shift at Victoria's Secret inside the Columbia Mall. She walked into the parking lot while talking on the phone with Chris. The conversation was casual, normal, until suddenly, Drew said, "Okay, okay." Her tone changed, confused, as if responding to someone standing near her, and then the call disconnected. Chris tried calling back, no answer. Nearly 3 hours later, her phone called again. This time, not her voice, only static, faint tones, button presses, no words, no scream, no way to know who was holding the phone. That second call became one of the most unsettling moments in her case. When Drew didn't return home, her family contacted police. Search teams combed the vast areas across North Dakota and Minnesota. Then came the first clue: her car, abandoned in Fisher, Minnesota, 20 miles away, doors locked, surroundings silent. Investigators began to suspect abduction. Security footage, offender lists, and cell tower data pointed them to one name: Alfonso Rodriguez Jr., a recently released offender with a violent history, whose timeline matched perfectly. He was arrested days later. Months passed before Drew's body was found on April 17, 2004, in a ravine near Crookston. Her death was ruled a homicide. Rodriguez was convicted, his sentence later reduced to life in prison. Yet still, the questions linger. What exactly happened in the minutes after Drew walked into that parking lot? Who made the second call with the static and keypad sounds? Was Drew still alive when it was placed? Her family honors her memory through the Purple Ribbon campaign, advocating for victims, strengthening laws, keeping her spirit alive. Friends remember her smile, her warmth, her creativity. What if those two calls were more than distress signals? What if they were the only fragments of a struggle no one ever saw? And what if the answers to those missing minutes were lost forever in the cold November air? Story 4. In the summer heat of 1996, the long roads stretching from Canada into the United States became the stage for a journey that baffled everyone who loved him. Blair Adams, once calm and steady, suddenly appeared anxious, restless, convinced that someone unseen, was following him. His family heard bits of frantic phone calls, fear in his voice, confusion they couldn't explain. Over just a few days, Blair began moving as if he were running from a threat only he could sense. Blair was born on December 28, 1964, in Surrey, British Columbia. Reliable, kind, warm-hearted, he was a construction worker, deeply attached to his parents and siblings. His sudden paranoia shocked everyone who knew him. His final journey began on July 9th, 1996. He crossed from Canada into the US, renting a Nissan Altima in Vancouver, then driving to Seattle. There, he bought a round-trip ticket to Frankfurt, Germany, but never boarded the flight. Instead, he exchanged it for a one-way ticket to Washington, D.C. At Dulles Airport, he rented another car, a Toyota Camry, and continued driving. En route 250 in Virginia, he backed into another vehicle. The other driver recalled that Blair seemed hurried, distracted, almost afraid. By July 10th, Blair had traveled 500 miles southwest to East Knox County, Tennessee. Around 5:30 p.m., he appeared at a BP station, struggling with his car key. When a repair driver arrived, he realized Blair was trying to use the key from the Nissan he'd abandoned in Seattle, not the Toyota he was driving. Blair refused to check his pockets, refused to even look for the correct key. Witnesses described him as disoriented, terrified, determined to stay in motion. He was dropped off at a Fairfield Inn in Knoxville. He lingered in the lobby for 40 minutes, paid cash for a room, but never went inside. Over the next hours, Blair drifted in and out of the area, calling family and friends. His messages were vague, fearful, and increasingly frantic. Days later, Blair Adams was found lifeless in Knoxville, his money, jewelry, and belongings untouched. No sign of robbery. The medical examiner concluded another person was involved, but no one could reconstruct what happened. Who was he running? Who or what did he fear? And why did his journey spiral across continents, airports, and highways? His family remembers him as the gentle, steady man he once was. They still revisit the phone calls, the fear in his voice, and the unsettling truth that they may never know what chased Blair across hundreds of miles. What if Blair's frantic journey was a desperate attempt to escape a real threat no one else could see? And what if the clues he left behind, the phone calls, the keys, the money, were fragments of a mind racing to survive? Story 5. In January 2004, a young father left a party, made a few final phone calls, and vanished almost immediately afterward. His last moments were ordinary, asking for a ride, checking in with his mother, texting friends. But somewhere between the text and the silence, something snapped, and what he said on the phone became the last thread connecting him to the world. Terrance Williams was born January 17, 1976, in Chattanooga, Tennessee. At 27, he moved to Naples, Florida, to be closer to his mother, Marcia, and to build a better life for his 4 children. Family and friends remember him as bright-eyed, devoted, playful with his kids, and always eager to help. He spoke with warmth, carried himself with pride, and talked about his children's futures as if he'd be there for all of it. On the night of January 11th, 2004, Terrance attended a party with coworkers. At 9 p.m., he called his mother, leaving a cheerful message. "Hey Mom, I'll be okay. Just giving you a quick update. Love you." Later, he made a few calls arranging a ride home. Shortly before midnight, his phone placed him near a convenience store in North Naples. According to witnesses, Terrance had been pulled over by Collier County Deputy Stephen Kelkins. The deputy claimed he offered Terrance a ride, then told dispatch he left him at a nearby convenience store. But the evidence didn't match. Terrance's Cadillac was later found at Naples Memorial Cemetery, not at the convenience store. His keys lay on the ground beside it, and records show that vehicle had been towed. with the deputy listed as the complainant. The official narrative says Terrance drove away on his own. His family says the timeline is impossible. Search efforts launched immediately. Law enforcement, cold case units, and federal investigators began comparing Terrance's case to another disappearance, one eerily similar. Felipe Santos, same county, same deputy, 3 months earlier. And just like Terrance, Felipe was never seen again. Yet the trail grew cold, evidence was scarce, and the phone calls Terrance made that night, calm, routine, revealed nothing about what was coming. They became the last known pieces of him. His mother, Marcia, lives in the waiting. Thousands of days, thousands of questions. Interviews, lawsuits, investigations, documentaries, and still no trace of her son. A reward was offered, records re-examined, but Terrance remains missing. What if Terrance's final phone calls were just his normal goodbyes, but the ride home was never meant to end? And what if the person who stopped that night, the one who offered help, was the last to see him alive? Each of these disappearances leaves behind questions that may never be answered, and memories that linger for those left behind. But their stories matter, and their voices are not lost. This is Vanished Stories, where the missing are never forgotten.